Hello and welcome to the Digital Mythology Podcast. I'm your host, Declan Goodman. Digital Mythology, where myth meets modern mastery. Today, I'm very excited to talk to Ava Battles, CEO of Multiple Sclerosis Ireland, MS Ireland. And today I'm going to be talking about how to use the 3 pillars of the Digital Mythology framework to help gain better outcomes of digital if you are a not-for-profit or a charity. Ava's very senior executive in MS Ireland, and I've met Ava a number of times, and I was always moved, and struck me was how much compassion and energy Ava has for the industry and for the overall MS Ireland movement. Ava, welcome. Delighted to have you on.
I'm delighted to be here, Declan.
So we're going to talk about digital today, and we're going to talk about how it impacts or enables, I guess, outcomes for a major not-for-profit organisation like MS Ireland. Before we do, would you mind just maybe giving us a wee bit of an introduction, Ava, to yourself, to MS Ireland, and just to give our audience a little bit more context?
So my name is Ava. I am currently the Chief Executive of the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Ireland. And I suppose something about me is that I've only ever actually worked in the community and voluntary sector. So since I left college, so I did a degree in psychology and then I did a master's in health psychology. I've only ever worked in the community and voluntary space. So you mentioned earlier on about passion, and I'm very, very, very passionate about what the community and voluntary sector can do for the people we serve. And I am the Chief Executive of MS Ireland. So MS Ireland is the only national organisation that provides information, support and advocacy services to the MS community. So we provide predominantly a service delivery organisation, and we provide services to people with MS. And I suppose I'm excited to talk about service delivery and how we do that, but then talk a little bit about that whole digital space then, and around maybe the challenges around that for me personally, for us as an organisation, and how it helps or not to provide services and the challenges that are involved in that. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Great. Yeah. And from my perspective, I've worked in digital for many years, but I've always enjoyed working with not-for-profits. MS Ireland's close enough to my heart as well, because my dad passed away a number of years ago. He had MS. It's a very invisible disease. It's very, can be quite isolating, etc. So we're going to talk a bit about that today in terms of how digital can help those with MS, people suffering from it, or the carers and the families around them. So I'm really excited, Ava, to have you on today. So thank you for making the time. Right, we're going to maybe kick off with a little bit of myth. I can't help myself. I love 2 things, digital and mythology. And mythology isn't about fairy tales. It's about stories that bring people together for human transformation. And it's ancient and it's not really changed. So what motivates people to engage in, community movements, the likes of MS Ireland, etc., is really about the stories behind them. And what I love about digital is a great way to share stories and to let people's voice be heard. So this is quite an exciting podcast for me today. So we're going to start with a myth of Saint Brigid of Kildare, Ireland, but she was also a Celtic goddess before that. And Saint Brigid was known for her cloak of compassion. So it was a beautiful symbol of where she was. She wanted to bring compassion to the land, but she didn't want to conquer the land or rule the land. So she started providing these sort of movements, these systems of compassion and support into the community to bring, to lead really with the heart and mind. So that brings me to the first pillar, which is Shin, which is heart and mind. So that's about when you want to get connect with people. There's a Chinese word Shin, which is Xin, and it means the bit between the intellect and the heart. It's a combined narrative that helps people move and get connected into a movement like MS Ireland, for example. So I like that myth because Brigid had to work with systems back in the 5th century in County Kildare in Ireland, but also she had to appeal to people's empathy, compassion. So with regards to that, I wanted to just ask you, Ava, a little bit about, obviously it's a pretty big part of MS Ireland, I imagine, where when you're trying to help people within your community and you're trying to get better engagement, I guess, appealing to that, you know, what I shall say, systems are cold, digital's cold. It's not warm. It's not really connective. And if we talk systems, we tend to lose people. So I'd love to know, learn of your insights into that aspect around MS Ireland and the heart and mind piece and how you found digital was able to help.
Okay, so I think we need to start with maybe just telling people a little bit about what multiple sclerosis is. Okay,
Please.
So for me, I would say multiple sclerosis is one of the most common diseases of the central nervous system. So that's a person's brain or spinal cord. And today there are more than 2.8 million people around the world that have MS. But in Ireland, we actually don't have an MS registry. But we do know that over 10,000 people are taking MS medications. Now, Declan, I'm already listening to this and I'm tuning out because I'm going blah, 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 blah. Because we tend to rhyme off these figures, okay?
Stats.
And they mean nothing. To a lot of people, they've already gone, okay, right, that's whichever, didn't know that, whatever. But to me, it's how we how we need to look at that. And this is where you've talked about the heart and mind piece. So for me, there are over 10,000 people in Ireland who live with MS. They're living every day with a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. They have their own story, each and every one of them. They have their own challenges. They have strengths. Some are struggling, some are managing, but every statistic is a person, okay? And each person then deserves to be seen, to be heard, and from our perspective, deserves to be supported. So for me, when we start talking about digital and statistics and things like that, every number, everything is an actual person. So it's a sister, you mentioned your dad, it's a brother, it's an individual with a story. And you also mentioned that earlier about how digital can help us create stories and make it about people. Because for me, that's what it's about. It's all about people. That's why I do what I do personally. It's because of the people that I engage with every single solitary day of the week. So you can have as many systems as you want, and you can introduce as much technology as you like. But to me, and again, I'm not being negative there. I'm just, for me, it is just still, it's about people and how we move people and how we connect people. And obviously there's no question in my mind, you can use technology to connect with people. But we lead, I believe, in MS Ireland with both our heart and our mind, right? So that for me is really important because we're invested in service like a respite facility where, you're providing one-to-one intimate care to a person. Our peer support groups, everything that we do, our policy, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to make change, but also digital comes into that because we couldn't engage with people now without the use of digital. Do you know what I mean? But I suppose the main thing for me is everything we do and every initiative we do must begin with the person at the center of that. And that, I suppose, is the most important thing. Even when I'm starting talking to you about a conversation about digital, it's not just a condition, it's a lived experience, it's an individual, it affects a person's at every part of their being, their confidence, their independence, their sense of identity, their sense of self-worth. And for me, if we keep that at the heart of everything we do, then we can start having a conversation about how digital enables that.
It's very lovely said. Thanks, Ava. It's always a passion of mine as well. How there's something in the industry called digital transformation. And I keep saying digital transformation is not about systems, it's about people. And often in the industry and IT, this is just a reflection on the industry I've been in for many years. We've been taught a lot about systems and frameworks and methods, etc. But sometimes we miss out that the very purpose of digital is people, and it's to help people, enable people really to better do what they do, or connect how they connect, or enable organisations like MS Ireland to provide services into the community in a more efficient and meaningful way. Yeah. So that's a lovely story. How do you find, in terms of your experience with digital, like you were speaking before, I was chatting to you earlier about the impact COVID had on the overall landscape for MS Ireland. Could you just, I mean, I know we kind of want to forget about COVID, but it was really a transformation in itself, COVID. It transformed digital all around the world in many industries. Do you want to just share a little bit about what, maybe, I know you could talk a lot about it because it was a huge impact, but I guess, what it meant for MS Ireland and other not-for-profits, around when COVID hit and you had those challenges. And now, obviously, out the far end of it, how digital has changed things, hasn't it, for
absolutely.
not-for-profits? Yeah.
Absolutely. It completely, from MS Ireland's perspective and our service delivery, it completely transformed our service delivery. So I suppose at a very basic level, Declan, pre-COVID, like MS Ireland didn't have, it's a shame to say it, but like we didn't really have a digital strategy in any way, shape or form. We had... Because I suppose we were doing what we do best, which is providing services to people, and that was predominantly face-to-face. So that was in our respite facility. Somebody comes in for 2 weeks of respite. Everything about that is face-to-face service. If I had asked a physiotherapist pre-COVID or said to them or even mentioned to them that you're going to run an online physio class, or we're going to transfer our physical class that is being run in Kildare, that you mentioned with St. Brigid. So if you in a community centre in Kildare, if we're going to transfer that to an online class, I guarantee you they would have looked at me and went, no, that's absolutely not possible. Like you don't understand service delivery. You don't understand what I need. Now, what we have is we are delivering more physiotherapy and exercise-related activity programs than we ever had, because we are now providing a service to people through, let's say, for example, Zoom. So let me just kind of visualize that for you. So if you take a person with MS who was a wheelchair user, who was living in the north of Donegal, okay? Accessibility isn't really great in North Donegal, or in many areas in Ireland. We don't have a lot of public transport that would be accessible. And you might have Mary, who is living in an area where it's very difficult for her to get into her local community centre to access her physio class. Also, she might also be the only person who is living in that area, for example, who's a wheelchair user. So when she comes into a class, she's in a class with 8 to 10 other people who have various different levels of ability. Now, because we're putting a class online, we can have Mary, who's living in the north tip of Donegal, in with Joan or John or Cullum, who are in all different parts of Ireland, who are all wheelchair users, who all just have to come downstairs or come into their living room or come into their sitting room, turn on their computer and engage in a physio class with 8 to 10 other people who are all experiencing the same as they are. What I mean by that is maybe they are all either wheelchair users, they're all either rollator users, they're all actually dealing with spasticity or bladder and bowel issues. So we can now tailor make our classes to the population that we are supposed to be serving. And just to give you some sense of that, Declan, as well, from the feedback from people, because, and this is where I like to, I suppose, really talk about that digital space and how it is so enabling. But also what people are saying on that is when Mary used to come in to Kildare or wherever she came in to have that physio class, she was physically meeting with 10 other people. And do you know what she was having? It was a cup of tea and a chat. She was having the cup and the tea and the chat either before the meeting, or ideally you'd have your physio session and you'd have it after the meeting. Now that you cannot replace. Now, I know you could sit there and say to me, but sure, you can sit and we could finish this conversation and have our cup of tea afterwards, virtually and whichever. But you know yourself, it's that personal connection. So to me, I can talk to you all day about the positives of how we are now delivering a physio class to somebody who is living in West Cork or whichever, who really would have given up going to their physio classes because fatigue is a huge symptom for people with MS. And what they were saying to us is, I have to get up, I have to go downstairs, I have to get ready, I have to get in my car, I have to drive for an hour to get to wherever it is that I'm going for my class. I'm exhausted by the time I get to my class. Whereas now I had somebody say to me the other day, they were saying, Ava, please don't change the online classes, because I can get up, I can go into my kitchen, I can be in my pajamas, because there's nobody else in that room, in that virtual room, who's going to
That's
judge
right.
me, for the fact that I'm in that room in my pajamas, because you know what, I didn't have the wherewithal. It took me everything it needed to get me to that actual class online, and they're saying, please don't change those. Yet at the same time, I could have somebody saying to me, oh, but I really miss the physical cup of
Mm,
tea. I miss that
yeah.
connection I had with people. So Declan, that for me is
Mm,
a perfect example of digital, how it enabled us to deliver services we couldn't even have dreamed of, how it's enabled us to get to people who never would have attended a class before, but also how it has, resulted in some people who are not savvy, like they're not computer savvy. Like if you
that's
take
it.
my mom,
Yeah.
for example, my mom does not understand that you and I
Mm,
now could be working here this minute. We could be engaging. Like she doesn't grasp
yeah.
that. She
Yeah.
never went to Zoom or Teams or any of those things over COVID, because the computer technology, it's not her thing. She
Mm,
can't understand why people sit on a train when she's coming up to Dublin to visit me, and they sit on a train and all they do is look down onto their phones, and they have earphones in, and they look at she's looking up going, is anyone going to talk to me? Like
yeah.
who's going to talk?
Yeah.
So
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 different, isn't it? Yeah.
yes, and that's
The
the spectrum
generation.
of people we need to serve. And
Mm,
it's how we manage to do that by embracing technology, which, to be honest, and digital and all that kind of thing, which, is not my skill. I'll admit that. And even if you talk to people in the community and voluntary sector, we're seen as the touchy feely. Oh, well, it's all about being touchy feely in our space and whatever. But yes, we are about service. We are about the person. We should be.
yes.
That's why
Yes.
we exist. That's why that's why MS Ireland
That's
exists.
that's right. And it's really lovely that though, because I'm always trying to come up with good examples where before, we entered before digital, like what we're doing now, even podcasting or chatting or on Zoom, except beforehand there was such a disconnect, really, a lost opportunity really to bring people with, say, who are all wheelchair users, right? Bring them all together. You don't have to travel 6-7 hours across the
No.
Irish countryside to be together. And it really brings MS into people's homes, doesn't it? That's what
Yes.
digital has
Yeah.
enabled to do. And even to the physio side of things, it's to be fair, I think that's actually going to be one of the big advantages, because by the time you go to physio, get into the car and move
Yeah.
around, and you're half exhausted by the time you arrive, and now you have to do some physio. Whereas at home, you get up out of bed in your PJs, boom, it's happening straight away, which
Also,
which
even
really is
Yeah,
helpful.
even to bring in accessibility there, though, Declan. So it's one thing as you as a person, what you have to navigate to get yourself out of bed into whatever mode of transport you're going to get, which, again, just to highlight, there isn't a lot of public transport, accessible public
That's
transport,
right.
if you're living in the back of the bonds. Okay, there isn't,
Yeah,
right? That's the
that's
reality. That's
fair.
the first
Yeah.
thing. When you actually get to the hotel, or for example,
Mm,
if it's not the hotel, let's say it's the local community centre or whatever, the likelihood of that being accessible is not very
another
high, which
challenge.
I'm ashamed to say, but it's not. Like there'll be a step going into the door. There won't potentially be an accessible toilet. Okay. So again, if you've left your house at whatever time in the morning to get to somewhere and you're doing your physio class and then you're going to somewhere where, you might say the hotel might say, oh, of course, yeah, we have an accessible toilet and whatever. And then next thing you realize, well, actually they have an accessible toilet, but not for my powered wheelchair. So there are so
Yeah.
many challenges and barriers for a person to just actually exist in the world that we exist in today. But digital can be so empowering from that point of view. There's absolutely no gray for me there. You mentioned podcasting, but the one thing actually I meant to mention as well, Tegan, which is really interesting, like pre-COVID, I think
Hmm.
one of us owned a laptop in MS
Is
Ireland.
that right?
One.
Amazing.
That was
Just
me.
one.
One. Like,
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
went, on a panic going, oh my God, we need to get
Yeah.
to the local store to actually buy people. Like
Well,
we
that's
were
right.
so fixated on a space, a building, an office, whichever. Like, we hadn't even contemplated some of what other organizations had done or where they were at. because again, it's not our priority. I know now you could argue with me around that, saying, well, it should be, and it should be as much, but it wasn't then, because
No, it wasn't.
if we were getting fundraised income, the fundraised income was used to provide a service to Mary. Sorry, I use Mary Maloney for everything.
Mary,
Character, right? So
yeah,
that's what we were about. We were about providing a service to somebody in the respite facility, or providing the
that's
physical
right.
physio
Very
class.
physical service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
service, or that face-to-face connection where one of my community workers sat down with somebody who'd been recently diagnosed, and you're having the cup of tea and you're having those conversations and whichever. That's what it was all about. It was about that service delivery, and it was about providing money to provide that service. It wasn't around getting us the best CRM system or the most wonderful laptops or digitally enabling us, but we were catapulted into that world. Even online services, our fundraising, for example. So if you take, for example, our fundraising, all our fundraising was physical. So here in Ireland, if you're doing your shopping at the weekend and you go to, again, I don't know, the Walmart, the stores,
Super Value,
Super Values, whichever it is, and somebody packs your bag at the end of the counter and you throw them a few pound and whatever. Sure. Like all those fundraising initiatives that when you go to Mass on a Sunday and you physically meet somebody at, the front, and there's a collection for MS Ireland or a collection for a charity, that world was gone overnight, because there was nobody going to Mass. There was nobody, you weren't allowed, pack somebody's bag. So fundraising all went online. We were having a virtual balloon race with no balloons, so that's literally
crazy.
That was one of our first fundraising initiatives, was this virtual balloon race.
So hang on, sorry, you had a virtual balloon race. Yes. Tell me about that. So
balloons were harmed in the process. So basically, you bought a balloon, a virtual balloon, which on the morning of the race, everyone's balloon was set off at the same time. So you could actually, based on the weather conditions in Ireland, your balloon headed off, and online I could watch my balloon wherever it went to. It might have burst in the first 5 minutes, or it might have continued for the entire time. So I could watch. So my father-in-law, who was in Perth in Western Australia, was watching his balloon go all through the counties in Ireland, and where his balloon was versus where my balloon was, and my balloon had gone off on a tangent and whatever. And then you watch this balloon, and the idea was that we would have 10,000 balloons for a balloon for each person with multiple sclerosis.
That's lovely.
So you bought a balloon and you watched these balloons go through Ireland, and then whatever balloon got from Malin to Mizenhead was the winner. But can you imagine that's so foreign from taking 20 people to a physical marathon in Dublin, where 20 people are running the marathon for MS Ireland, because they weren't able to do that. But you know what we had? We had one gentleman within the first 2 weeks of lockdown who ran a marathon in his backyard.
I think I seen that on your socials. He ran it in his backyard. Amazing.
Backyard, because he was there going, well, I need to exercise. I want to, he was always, to be fair to him, he's been incredibly generous to people with MS and MS Ireland.
Yeah.
So he did a marathon in his backyard. It was only we were literally only a few weeks into COVID. It was incredible.
It's amazing.
What people were doing.
But and on that, I mean, look, the thing for me as well is that even that bit about seeing your balloon moving across Ireland, and even the digital enablement there to have that visibility and tracking and everything, people all over the world coming in on it. I really like that. I was going to talk about a different myth as well, and this one's important to me as well. It's one of my favorite ones, though. It's about the monk, the blindfolded monks and the elephant. So the idea is that there's a few monks, 2-3 monks are blindfolded, and they're asked to go into a cave and approach something and guess what it is. And the monk, it's an elephant, but they don't know that. And the monk at the front feels the trunk and he says it's a snake. And the monk at the back feels the leg and says it's the trunk of a tree. And the monk in the middle pushes on the main belly and says it seems like some kind of wall or sail. And then only when they stepped back and took off the blindfolds, they could see that it's an elephant. The beautiful thing about that myth and story is that you can't always see the big picture. And I think what digital helps do is it helps everybody get a bit more access to services and to understanding, what what MS is, and to understanding what the overall, I mean, it kind of makes them less invisible. That's how I see it in terms of digital. Is that something
Yeah.
resonates with MS Ireland,
Yeah.
do you think?
No, it's interesting actually. I really like that metaphor because I think it really captures a number of things for me. One, the complexity of MS. Two, the invisibility of MS, because it's often called an invisible condition. Because for many people, they see somebody, and because, for example, they don't have a rollator or they don't have a limp or whatever it is, they think, oh, sure, that person is fine. Well, sure, what's wrong with them? They don't have, they have MS, but sure, they don't understand it. Okay. So I suppose to me, it's about the importance of people being seen and understood. And I think the most important thing for me to say to anybody who's just kind of trying to get their head around MS, it's no two people experience MS in the same way. So it's like that blind man and the elephant. People might only experience MS in one way where they see maybe the fatigue, or it might be a mobility issue. So if it's visible, people understand it. If somebody approaches them and they have a rollator or they have a stick, okay, they then think, all right, okay, that person has
It's more
MS.
visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if then there's somebody in front of them and they're talking about the fact that they did the mini marathon at the weekend, or actually the marathon at the weekend for that matter, and whichever, and now they're talking to them about, about my cognitive fog or the fact that I have pins and needles and whichever, and that kind of stuff. People don't grasp that. They're not, they find that quite difficult to understand. But one of the things I wanted to bring up here, which I think you like, is this concept, Evan, of the misunderstood coffee shop. So MS understood coffee shop that we did. Okay. And I think you'll enjoy this as a concept. So this was where people with MS, we were hearing an awful lot from people with MS going, okay, nobody knows what MS is. So even when I got diagnosed myself, I had no idea what MS was, right? So I had to go to Google or whatever, or I thought a lot of people get it mixed up with motor neuron and various other different conditions, okay? So, and a real thing for people with MS is my boss doesn't understand what MS is. My family didn't know what it is. They had this perception that I was going to be in a wheelchair and whichever. So we looked at this initiative whereby we took over a coffee shop. So it was actually, we rented a space in the city centre of Dublin, and we just put over the door MS understood. So nobody, like coffee shop, that's it. So anyone walking on the street just said, oh, a new coffee shop, big sign outside, coffee today, €1 all day. Doesn't matter where you are, there's always going to be people that's going to come in that door because it's coffee for €1, okay? But here's what we were trying to do. So the initiative was around trying to make people aware of some of the symptoms that people with MS live with on a daily basis. So when you walked in the door of the coffee shop, remember now, this is just you walking in the door of a coffee shop to get your €1 coffee on the way to work. The ground immediately under your feet was uneven. So you walked in and you kind of went like this. You were like, oh, right, okay, whatever, because it was all uneven. You walked up to the counter and you looked at the counter and you were looking at your mochas and your lattes, and next thing it went all blurry.
Oh,
and you can see people, because we were videoing it, and you can see people and they're going,
what's going on?
And then they go, okay, no, maybe whichever. The actual counter started. So lots of people would have their hand on the counter while they're looking up at the display.
They would at the screen.
The counter started to move.
Right.
So then you're there kind of going, right, okay. So and you can see people, they're just going, and then you can see some people going, geez, this is
disorientating, wouldn't it?
Great shop, is it? This place, whatever.
No wonder it's €1.
Exactly. Then you give them their cup of coffee, and the coffee mug had the tiniest little area for you to put you couldn't put your finger in it, so it's really awkward. When you bought your sweet, it was wrapped 4 or 5 times. So what we were trying to get across was a person with MS, visual disturbances, when they're walking, the ground feels unstable under them. When they're trying to hold a coffee cup, it's not easy. When they're trying to open a wrapper, It's like opening a wrapper if you have a pair of gloves on. It's
gloves
not.
on
So
or
all of the
blurry
experience,
vision.
the
Love that.
blurred vision, the optic neuritis that people experience often when they first have
Yeah.
an experience of a symptom of MS. So we basically filmed this, and it was without a shadow of a doubt. Now, the most important thing for me, I should say, is that this wasn't gimmicky. Okay, we had people with MS involved in the entire process, so that they would show, no, that's the symptom I want people to see. So when you were pulling the chair out to sit in it, like the chair would normally come out, the chair was so heavy, like so heavy, because that's how people experience.
Isn't that a lovely idea? That's a very
It was
clever
wonderful.
idea.
I suppose the learnings from it then, though, were the key thing for me was what people with MS said was, I brought my partner down, and he or she
Wow.
walked in and experienced something that I couldn't explain to them.
So you know what? You're kind of removing the blindfolds, aren't you?
Absolutely.
For someone who may
really
not
like
have
that.
actually seen the fact that to lift a cup of coffee or a cup of tea is effort. It's like I have to put energy into that, and then to move my chair, I'm so tired or I'm so weak. It's a very nice idea. Is that still going? Was it just a once-off campaign thing? Was it?
It was a pop-up shop for a day.
Okay.
So it was a pop-up shop for a day. And then actually what was the only negative feedback we got from people with MS is, that's in Dublin. I can't bring my
They come up
so
to
we
Dublin.
actually put it onto a mobile bus, and we took it to different cities in Ireland where we pulled up in a really popular space, we'll say on the main street in Limerick City, for example, and we said, we'll be here for a day, come on in. If you want to, as a person with MS, come in, or you want to bring your partner or your loved one, come in and experience it. And
it's a great idea. Even
it was also fundraising.
Well, fundraising, but it's also a good idea for employers as well. Like, if you have employers to be more aware of what it's like for their staff with MS to work there. I really like that. And that whole idea, and you know what, there was also, I think it's very clever, by the way, misunderstood. It's a very
again, to
nice
somebody
use
not
of
in
language,
the MS
isn't
world,
it?
you don't see them. You just say misunderstood. That's all you see. To somebody. So it's examples like that. And I think something you said earlier as well, like if you take the podcast like now, or the MSME blogs that we do now, okay, it's about people sharing how it is for them to navigate the world they're in,
isn't it? But it's actually about, if I was to go further and say, it's kind of about people helping others understand what the elephant is and what's involved, and you're able to share. Like, digital allows you that platform, that ability to, and I would probably say it would bring people, like, if you have a more awareness, then you can reach common understanding better, right? Because you have, and for me, one of the things that struck me about MS is, indeed, it is something I didn't know much about either. And you think about physical, but then you don't think about, so readily, you don't think about the non-physical symptoms as well and stuff. So that was, I think that was a lovely concept.
I think if you see, there's nothing more powerful than a person with MS writing about their story. Like, you can say something like fatigue, for example, okay? And everyone, doesn't matter who you are, will go, oh yeah, God, I was very tired getting out of bed this morning. Or, they'll say, I was out this weekend and I'm really tired. But it's when you read a person's blog where they're explaining the sheer challenge they have of getting out of bed in the morning. And I'm going to use one descriptor that a person had. She said, my fatigue isn't tiredness. It's like someone pulled the plug out of my soul. Now, if that isn't like, that's not, oh, Jesus, it was difficult for me to get out of the bed this morning now to be on this podcast with you and the other side of the world. It's a different level.
It is.
Fatigue. But if you just say fatigue as a symptom, okay, people will go, sure, I'm tired. Like, I'm busy. I've got 4 kids and a dog and whatever. My life is busy. And you always compare yourself to someone else. But it's those stories that we can share through digital. And the other thing I find with that as well is people can engage with those stories as much or as little as they want, because they are online or they're on the website and whatever. So you can tap in and read and then take yourself away from it because it's too much now.
Yeah, no, that's actually quite nice as well, because to me, like, I didn't know there was many, like there's a lot of different aspects to MS itself
Yeah.
as a disease, and the services MS Ireland offers. But even that, with the digital aspect of it, just having that, access to people sharing stories. That's why I love stories, because
Yeah.
stories. What I often say about stories is, they kind of often remind you of things that you never knew. It's
Yes.
that kind of feeling when you hear a story and someone connects in with with the shin, with that kind of heartfelt. You start to actually awaken within yourself these memories, or these perceptions that were really buried away. So I can
Yeah.
imagine it's a big aspect. I was going to talk about the last piece of our overall discussion here today, Ava, is around catalyst. So one of the third pillars that I like to use in the digital mythology storytelling framework is catalyst, which is about how do you move people and how do you inspire people. And I like this concept of there's a lovely story about a father and son, and that they're out in the woods and they're trying to build some kind of structure, and a few sticks go down, and the father explains to the son that if you stand on that, it's going to crack under your feet. So put more sticks and more sticks and more branches. And eventually it has a lot of structure and strength, especially given that the sticks and branches are their own unique shape. They have their own unique texture.
Mm.
And by getting that diversity of structure underneath your feet, it actually makes it far more strengthened. And that's a lovely metaphor as well I like to use when it
Mm.
comes to digital and empowering the community to connect. Can you give me, just talk a little bit about MS Ireland, and then obviously how important community is, I imagine, and how digital helped in terms of, enhance that reach into the community and help bring community together?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Community is the key. Even when we
Mm.
talked about it earlier, and we talked about how empowering digital was in relation to the provision of physio, people that still want the community, though, and they want
Mm.
that they want to know people
Yeah.
in the community. They want to engage with people in the community. But there's some really, I suppose, for me, what came to mind around that would be some really powerful global initiatives. So, for example, if you take the May 50K, so every May there's a fundraising initiative. It was actually born in Australia, but around
Right.
the world now are using it. And it's, how I would look at that, is I would say, and a lot of the funds that are raised, by the way, for the May 50K is predominantly for research. So it's for the provision of
Okay.
research. Okay, so it's that hope piece. So if you think of that then and link it back to your story, so
Mm.
basically for me, every step in that May 50K is the twig. It's that shared
Yeah.
effort to build, whether it's strength, the visibility, the hope for the MS community. That's what it's about. So together, we're either going to walk, we're going to go in our wheelchair, we're going to swim, we're
Mm.
going to do whatever it is, to work together as a community and a global community to raise money
Mm.
to try and see if ultimately a cure can be found for MS. So that now
Yeah.
to me is the best example, for example, of community. I mean, and that's talking about, that's a worldwide community born, as I said, in
Amazing.
Australia, a fundraising initiative that was born in Australia that now
Amazing.
Australia is saying, okay, to the MS organisations, because MS Ireland is part of what's called the Multiple Sclerosis International Federation. So we're one
Okay.
organisation, and then all our sister organisations around the world are part of that because we are sharing. So yesterday, for example,
Mm.
we had a board meeting, a Multiple Sclerosis International Federation, where there are chief executives and people from all over the world in a room sharing experiences, learning from each other.
Amazing.
People who in countries which are, raising multi millions for research
For
versus countries
research.
who barely have an MS organization, who are only
Amazing.
starting. who are only starting to build a community, who, for example, and you have to be mindful of all this because they haven't necessarily embraced technology as of yet, and they're just even starting. So that's one initiative that came to mind, and the other one was World MS
Yeah.
Day. So on the 30th of May every year, I suppose, is when the voices of people with MS from all over the world come together and connect, basically, to
So,
not have this isolation piece. So we all come together. So it's kind of a modern version of your
yeah,
story, I think. So I suppose we're rising with the shared stories, that solidarity, that action for the millions of people that have MS. But we're coming together globally on a day to actually express that and to say we're stronger together and we are
stronger
building a
together.
community. So
Isn't that
they're two,
lovely?
I suppose, that they're two
Mm.
examples that really came to mind of a community, but a global and international community coming together.
Yeah,
And I
love
suppose
that.
that's very
It's great.
empowering. Yeah,
It's also opens my mind to the fact that it's not just the people suffering from MS been coming together. It's the people, the scientists,
absolutely.
the fundraisers, the corporations, the social responsibility. These people leading out this
Absolutely.
change can collaborate internationally. And that's one
Yeah,
fantastic thing, obviously, about digital. So, you know what I mean? Like there's part of digital that the MS, people with MS experience, but then there's the part they may be not fully aware of is the research and
yeah.
bringing together collaborative fundraising ideas, etc. And the world's gone so global now. There's
Oh,
almost everybody within every country would know somebody who's connected to
absolutely.
MS
And if they
or in.
don't, somebody will know somebody that we can
Yeah,
get the connection for them because it's so small
yeah,
now.
it
It's
is.
it's
Yeah, it's
literally
amazing.
it's a click away going, okay, I know this person here who might be able to make the connection for them. And it is, I suppose the whole thing for me is it's a movement. What we're involved with is it's a movement, but it's not my movement. Do you know,
Mm,
it's people with MS. It's all of their collectively. It's their movement, and that for me is what makes the difference. And there's things you have to do and do as MS Ireland in Ireland, and then there's the bigger picture for people with MS. There's the bigger people for people with MS all over the world. So it's making representation in Ireland for the person with MS who lives in Cork or
yeah,
Kerry. But then it's making representation for the person who lives in a country where they have no access to MS medication.
it's
So we need to be empowering that entire movement. We need to be sharing stories. We need to be
yeah,
engaging with each other. We need to be
yeah.
learning from each other. We need to be giving resources to each other to ensure that, I suppose, to ensure that we can make a difference.
I'm sure when people connecting with people in Canada or Australia or, parts of South Africa or whatever it is in the world, they realize actually I'm not so alone here, right? Even it transcends cultures, it transcends languages. It's a very human enterprise itself, MS, which I love how digital can do that because sometimes, we get tucked away in our own little world, our own little bubble, and we think
Yep.
it's an MS Ireland challenge, but
Yeah.
then if you go to MS UK or MS Australia, it's like, oh yes, similar type challenges there. So that's a wonderful, broad review, as in of how digital impacts and enables MS. I guess a few takeaways, Ava. I'd like to just for our audience listening, digital. We had Saint Brigid of County Kildare and the previous Celtic goddess about making compassion accessible and handing it out, making it within reach for everybody. I see digital is amazing for doing that. We have
Yeah.
the blind monks and the elephant in terms of how digital can help people see different parts of MS that they may not have been aware of. It just kind of removes the blindfolds and helps people share. You don't have to have the same
Yeah.
symptoms as me,
No.
but I can
Yeah.
connect in and understand what you're going through. And then the third is, the bundle of sticks, which I like, is that individualism, people's own individual journeys, all meshing on top of each other to make us stronger and bring us together. So yeah, what would be there for me, that's a wonderful way of using myth to express the digital side. How about
Yeah.
yourself in terms of
Yeah.
takeaways for people listening?
Okay, and it's interesting, Declan, because even when you first approached me about this, I was a little bit challenged by how we were going to use myth and the whole digital space. And I said to you very openly, I'm there going, oh God, like the digital isn't
Yeah.
even my space. Do you know what I mean? For me to talk
Yeah.
about. But
Yeah.
you can see like, and if we look at the first one, like digital can expand your services. Okay, like we can see that. I've talked about it now, even quite passionately about how I feel digital can expand your services, but it cannot replace presence for me, and that presence between people and that connection with people. So we have to be mindful of that. Okay, I suppose that's what I'm saying,
It's a
and
good
it
takeaway. Yeah.
reminds me that systems without, and we go back to this heart and mind piece, systems without the heart lose their purpose. Okay, so we have to be mindful of empathy and dignity at the center of every service still. So no matter what we bring or what we put in place from the point of view of the technology to enable the service to happen, it's still about the person. We're not simply here to provide a service and tick a box. We're here to walk with the person with MS. We're here to recognize each person's humanity, not just their diagnosis. If there's two things I hear from people with MS, the most often it is, one, I have MS, but it doesn't have me. I hear that all the time from people. And the other thing I hear, which I think is very powerful, is I am more than my diagnosis of MS. Because what people feel is that once you get a diagnosis, that's how people see you. They see you as, oh, that's the girl, that's the whoever who has MS. And it's like, hold on a minute, I'm 50 million things, as well as the fact that I have an MS diagnosis. So they're the two things I suppose that's very, very clear for me in relation to, we'll say the first piece. And then if we talk about, I suppose, the elephant, and what we're talking about in relation to this, that stories, how important stories are. So one piece of a jigsaw, again, I go back to the learning of no two MS journeys are the same. Okay, no two are. That's why it's important that we amplify individual stories through the MSME blog, our podcasts, again, all digital, peer support groups, awareness campaigns. Okay, we complement the statistic that 10,000 with the lived experience. Right. So that's what we should be doing. So that's, I suppose, something that we have to learn how to do that, ensuring that everything around any policies, any planning, any understanding of people with MS reflects the absolute complexity. And we talked about that, about the complexity of MS, and how important it is to ensure that we are showing that. And then I suppose the last one for me then is real change takes a lot of people. Like a lot of people. Okay. So it's not about what I can do. It's not about what one of my staff team can do. It's about a shared commitment. It's our branches, our volunteers, our board, our fundraisers, our service users. Every one of those, they're not bystanders, bystanders. They are the people who make the difference. They're the co-creators, whatever word you want to. We can't do it. So maybe. Yeah, all of us.
It's the sticks.
The sticks, exactly.
Yeah.
So May 50K, the sticks. Renew MS Ireland, our campaigns for developing the care centre and developing a new facility in Limerick. Our advocacy work developed the new centres. Progress only happens when all the sticks come together. When all of them are, working towards one goal, which is everything to do with and ensuring that we are providing the right services for people with MS.
Because my memories of MS and all that was when my dad was suffering from MS. That was before COVID hit, and there wasn't much digital or anything really going on compared to what there is now. But also, I think there was a shift in the overall industry after COVID as well, where people realized fundraising is actually something that there's parts of it that was immensely suffered for a while. There was this really significant drop, and then after a while, hopefully it'll continue that way, but it got a bit better. But yeah, I do like that idea about systems can't replace people either, and replace what did you say was the word you used? Present. So I really like that. So systems cannot replace presence. Ava, I really enjoyed chatting to you about it. And thank you for sharing your insights on obviously your real world experience. I think that concept you used earlier, you mentioned lived experience, so digital digital, yes, it helps reach others. It helps bring people together. It helps keep everybody, breaks down the stigma and all these other things, and it gives people awareness. But it also can be, it's only successful when there's people like yourself and working for your organization and volunteers and community members putting in their time and energy into it, right? Systems can't do that. Systems are there to enable effort and to enable outcomes. It still comes down to the people.
Yeah. That's
Lovely.
clear. Yeah.
And any final message then before we finish up, Ava?
Well, I was actually, if you don't mind, I was going to finish with a quote. And the reason why
Please.
is because I actually I really like this John Wesley quote, and I think it's partly why we do what we do, but it's around do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can.
Wow.
That's me. Done.
Isn't that lovely? What a lovely way to end it. Yeah, it's a lovely quote, isn't it? It's very reflective of what you do and what MS Ireland does and what people who have, that empathy and that compassion. Lovely quote. Well, thanks for ending on that note, Ava.
Not at all. Thank you, Declan.
Lovely having you as a guest.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thanks to the audience for listening.